This is the SAU Report, a program featuring interviews with the faculty, staff, students, and alumni of Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.
Welcome to today's edition of the SAU Report. We're your hosts, Duane Maeweather
and Bwerani.
Today we'll be interviewing two people whom we find very, very important to the SAU campus. They work in the business office. You've seen them, and I've seen them too. Please welcome Ms. Brenda Garrett and Ms. Diane. First, we're going to start things off with just a little, educational background.
Went to school at Henderson. Graduated in '83 with a degree in accounting. As soon as I got out of school in '83, I went to work there at Henderson, and while I was working, I got my master's degree in business administration and worked as an accountant at Henderson. And then when I left there in '93 to come here, I was an assistant controller and came here as controller.
I straight out of high school came to Southern Arkansas University. I've lived in Magnolia all my life. Lived at home, went to college here, and studied got the associate's degree. At that time it was called secretarial science, but it's the office management type things. And after graduating from SAU, I went to work at an oil company here in town, McAllister Fuel Company. Worked there for about 9 years. And then I quit to teach an exercise program called Jazzercise and worked with that for several years, and then had children and stayed home.
Could you tell me how was it that you came about getting the position here at Southern Arkansas University, Ms. Garrett?
My position here, I had some friends who worked in the business office, and they needed a part-time relief cashier in the window, working in the window. So they asked if I would mind coming a day here and there, part-time, pay days, busy days, that kind of thing. And I agreed to come, thought it would be fun to work part-time since I haven't worked in so many years. It was kind of scary at first. But they asked me to come work here, so I came and worked part-time, just a few days here and there, and then an opening came up in the student accounts and asked if I would take it. And after a lot of consideration, I gave up staying at home to come to work.
Listen, what type of consideration went into your application process here at Southern Arkansas University?
Well, actually, it's a really interesting situation. My husband is employed with International Paper, and they're notorious for moving around quite often, although we have not had to do quite the moving many people do. He was transferred in '93 to the Spring Hill facility in Louisiana, and of course, the only background I had so far had been in higher education, and I loved higher education. And so I naturally looked at SAU. Their controller at the time, or the controller here, had decided to go back to graduate school at Fayetteville. So there was an opening, and the timing was just right. I came in and told them that I'd been training for this job for 10 years, and I thought I could handle it. And here I am.
I mean, what did your job, what does it consist of doing? Like, what?
Well, I am over the areas of student accounts and financial accounting. So we have all the financial reporting, the budgeting, student accounts, general accounting type activity, cash flow, inventories, investing, just basically all the financial data comes through our office.
What does your job, what does it really, I know you in charge of, like, if students have trouble getting into school or whatever, you have to write a note or whatever, or let the people downstairs or upstairs know, you know.
Well, it's called student accounts, so it's basically anything that affects the account of the student with the university, which would be helping with their financial aid, if there's anything we can do to help get that processed, or information that we can find for them. If there are any charges on their account that they don't understand, or many times we get phone calls wanting an estimate of the charges, what it would cost to do this or that. We're accounts receivable. We deal with the collection of the money for the university and if students unfortunately get out of school and don't have their account paid off, we have to pursue that and try to collect that money. And we help with their loans a little bit and interpreting those things. I see my job basically as helping if the student has a need in finding what they need to do in the university or that affects their account, whatever that is, and it can be a large variety of things. We try to help as much as we can.
And I have to add that counseling is actually part of what they do. It's not part of their job title, but they do an awful lot of counseling.
I've seen it in action.
Yeah, you might have been on the receiving end of that counseling.
Yeah, I have a number of times.
Yeah, and neither Ms. Garrett or Ms. Camp take that job lightly. Yeah, they throw a little bit of mother practice in there and help a lot of students through a lot of situations.
Yeah.
Starting with you, Ms. Garrett, when is your job just the hardest,
The hardest. I'd have to say registration.
Registration.
I'd have to say registration is the hardest. It's exciting, and you just kind of gear your mind up for it. But you've got to be alert, and you have to be pretty well on top of things, and it's a confusing time. So it's a very tiring time, but it's exciting too.
What about you, Ms. Newton?
Actually, I would say the most difficult time of my job is actually from July 1st through about the middle of September. Our year ends June 30th, so beginning July 1st, we're in high gear on closing out our year, filing all of our reports, creating our financial statements, dealing with information for auditors, then waiting on them to get here and then handling them once they get here. So it's a real stressful time and it's a real busy time. We put in a lot of long hours and hard work during the time of July through the middle of September. I haven't taken a vacation after July 1st in 14 years, so you have to get all that in before June 30th.
Ms. Garrett, how many students do you see on a daily basis?
Oh goodness, that varies depending on the time during the semester. Of course towards registration, there are, I've never counted. During fall registration, I think it was close to 200 or 300 one day that we saw.
In just one day?
In one day, the only reason we know that's because we had to have them sign in. We had so many that we couldn't determine who was next and who we needed to see next. So we had to have everyone sign in so we'd know who was next in line, and we counted them that day. But otherwise, we've really never. But that's the most extreme heavy day. During the course of a normal day, probably 10, 15, I'd guess. And that counts phone calls with the students and that kind of thing.
Those normal days are not too often, are they?
Well, no. Every day's different. It's never a dull moment.
Starting with you, Ms. Newton. What are some of your strengths and weaknesses of your job? I mean, that you find a strength or weakness?
Of me in my job, or of
your job, just your job, total.
Well, my job itself has a lot of strengths in that I'm able to be involved in a lot of things. Because of my position, I'm placed in the situation where I know a lot of information about things that are going on with the university, things that are going on with our peer universities, things that are going on within the state. A lot of information passes through our office and across my desk, so it's interesting. You learn a lot, you see a lot of information, and you are aware of a lot of things that you normally would not be aware of. So I would say that's one of the strengths, I would think. One of the weaknesses is that
Have to work through registration?
no, not so much that. I actually am one of those warped people that like registration. Yeah, I actually like it. Always have, always will. It's, for one thing, it gets you out of the office. Just by the nature of the beast, accountants tend to spend a lot of time in their office. They spend a lot of time behind their desk, pushing the pencil, dealing with numbers, making puddles of adding machine tape. We do an awful lot of that. And it's nice to be able to get up and move around, visit with people, you know, and do a little bit of what the student accounts people get to do. You know, get out there and talk to the people, you know, because you're why we're here, and you'll have a lot of interesting things going on in your lives. Yeah. Plus, I think one of the things I like about my job is that I have the opportunity to have a really good team in our office, and we work extremely well together. We have an awful lot of fun working. Our philosophy is if we're going to spend as much or more time with each other than we do with our families, then we might as well have fun doing it. So we do all kinds of things to make our job fun and interesting, and we get a lot of comments from other offices on how much fun we have together and how well we get along.
Y'all get along real. Every time I go down there, y'all are together.
We have a lot of fun.
We might as well. We get a lot of work done too. We work very hard, but we also have a lot of fun together, and that's what makes it bearable.
Yeah, that's important. What about you, Miss Garrett?
I think one of the strengths of my job is that it is so diverse. It covers so much territory that there's a lot I've had to learn quickly. I enjoy that. It's not dull. It's never boring. About the time you think you've got a situation learned and you've heard everything, well, here comes something new and different. So there's always new things to consider. There are always new skills to learn, which some people might consider a weakness, but I think it's a challenge. I enjoy learning new things and trying to acquire new skills and that kind of thing. I enjoy dealing with the students, but there again, that's one of the weaknesses is there are so many people to help and so much to do that I have to spread myself so thin, and many times we don't get it all done because there's just no way to get it all done. We have to spend so much time. We're interrupted a lot, but that's just part of the job. So.
Ms. Newton, has there ever been a student or students who you may have wanted to help them out in some type of way with their financial aid or something, a type of advice given about school?
Assistance.
But it wasn't in your power to do so?
Well, actually, they don't let me around student accounts very often. They try not to let me deal with those people because they laugh at me and say I have the big red S on my forehead. I'll fall for any story that anybody gives me, and I'm the one pulling my checkbook out of my purse almost, you know, as the pity tears are falling. It's a fine line because there are so many people who are willing to feed you a line, but then there are so many people who desperately need help, and it's really hard to determine which ones are which sometimes. It's unfortunate that we have those people who are willing to you know, tell you anything to get by just because they're not willing to work for, you know, what they want like other people do. And so it makes it harder on the people who really, really are trying and doing everything they can and can't, you know, just can't quite make those ends meet. And there are those that, there are some of us in the university who have the option of making few, and I mean very few, exceptions. And occasionally I have been known to make an exception, but once we make those exceptions, we call it the adoption rule. You make the exception, you get that person's initials, you know, you get your initials attached to that person's student account from now on because, you know, you're the one that went on the limb. And we think it's unfair for someone like me to say, okay, you know, Duane, I'm going to let you in. You know, I really fell for your story this time. But yet Ms. Garrett has to follow up on it and do the work on it. So, so the agreement is if I let you in, then I do the follow-up work. You know, I'm the one that's calling you and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And we only allow that one time. And
so it's like a one-time.
It's a one-time exception. It's a one-time deal. You know, I'll fall for it once, but you show me that you're trying and following through with what you've told me you're going to do, and have the means to, you know, to continue on in the future. So there have been a few times that I have made an exception. There are times that we've not been able to, that it's really hard, and we used to think that we used to feel really bad about that, but we've come to look at it from another perspective in that so many times, even if we made an exception for the student, we're not doing the student any favors because that student is either probably not going to be a good candidate for success or will not have the financial means to continue on, may not make it through a semester, therefore they have the charges on there. They end up being unsuccessful. Instead of being unsuccessful, not ever getting in, they're unsuccessful with this huge debt. So we really try to weigh the consequences of saying no, and sometimes saying no is really better for the student because it pushes them out there into the workforce to earn a little money and be more prepared.
So how do you, say discriminate or choose while walking that fine line? How do you single the people out?
It's really hard, and it's just you take it one student at a time. There's, I can't look and say, I can't look at the history of the students that I've done that with and say that they're biased one way or another. It's just the student. It's just the student's attitude, the student's potential for being successful, the student's potential for creating the means to continue on rather than having to be carried through the whole way. That's part of the educational process, and that's part of what we feel like we're not in the classroom with the students, but we feel like that at least we can educate the students on the ways of life.
Ms. Garrett, have you ever been put in this situation?
Oh, many times.
Every day.
We face it every day. There, a lot of times it has to do, we like to try if it's a brand new person, or sometimes they do have a track record and they've done well in the past and they've just hit a snag and they need some extra help. If we can see that they've always done what they said they would do, if they've always followed through with their word and made a real earnest effort to try, we try to give them the benefit of the doubt. If in the past we can see that they've not followed through with what they've done, with what they said they could do, or if they've made false promises or tried to con us into something, then you can usually tell after the fact when you follow the history of the student. Then it comes a point where you have to say no because you can see that they're not really earnest and they're not sincere in what they're doing and what they're telling you. It's reading character is what it is. You have to. A lot of times the attitude of the student and sincerity you can see the sincerity that they have. If they really want an education, if they're serious about an education, or if they just woke up this morning and decided to go to school and don't know how to buy books. If they've put some thought into it. And if ever once we give them a chance and we try to follow through and help them out as much as we can, and if they purposefully, and many of them will purposefully just not do what they said. They have no intention of following through. Well, they won't get a second chance. We can't afford it.
Both of you work through registration, right? I mean, just give us some estimates of the aggravations that you go through every time. I mean, what? Because you have to send kids all the way back here and all the way back there, and they come back, they're still wrong. I mean,
Go ahead. Well, I might just start out by saying that we're the end of the line, so regardless of what the hassles have been, whether they've been in our area or the admissions area or the registrar's area or with the advisor, whatever their problems have been, we're the end of the line, and we're the ones that hear it. It's our fault.
It's our fault. I think we have made an effort to improve that situation when they've moved registration all into one building. So we make an effort we have to move our offices at registration. We move everything. This means calculators, lists, all information we might possibly need to help a student. We have to move it all to another office, relocate. Well, they set us up computers over there so that we can look at their accounts. But we try to move all into one central location so the student won't have to go all over the campus to find what they need. So they can go up and down floors instead of across the whole campus, which I think is good for the student. And it's good for us too, so that when we need information from another department, we know they're within the building and we can get hold of them and find them if we need to. We see lots and lots and lots and lots of students that day.
I mean, what are you, okay, it's a problem, registration. I mean, is there any way you can, any idea you have to improve registration? Just in your opinion, both of you?
Well, we're constantly trying to improve registration, which is why you hear students say it's different every registration.
It is.
Because, and
Really.
part of it is because we're trying to improve it. Sometimes things that we do work, sometimes they don't. And you just never know until you go through it. You think something's going to work, and then you end up with more people in a particular line than you thought you would have, and therefore you cause congestion. Or a piece of information we thought would be easier to get at registration creates a line, that wraps around the building. So things that we think would be helpful to the students sometimes turn out not to be. So sometimes we make changes, we're constantly making changes, and that's why it's not the same. Eventually, maybe we'll get there, to where we feel like we've got it going. We are making some improvements. We're in the process of doing it now with online loan checks, which will cut the waiting in line to pick up your loan check, both at registration and at the cashier's window. But that involves getting this, I hear a round of applause there. But that involves getting the programs in place, getting software from the U.S. Department of Education, getting software from the banks, getting all the links up and running. And it's an involved process. And not only that, but we have to, make sure that logistically speaking, we've got it set up right on our campus so that, we're still not creating more problems. So we're trying to get it set up right before we put it out there. But I'm sure we'll do it wrong the first time, and it'll be a mess. People will have to stand in line. There will be something not quite right, and it'll change for the next semester.
What do you think about the current administration here?
The current administration?
Yes.
I think we have an administration, although you realize with Dr. Hafner gone, we have a new VP for Student Services. And
Ms. Donna Allen, right?
Dr. Donna Allen, yes, she came from the counseling area.
Right.
And I think that we have an administration that works well together. They have a shared vision, I think, for the university. They work hard as a group and with the offices, with the directors of the different offices on strategic plans for their particular areas. And we're required, matter of fact, we're updating ours and working on things that we did well according to our strategic plan, things that we didn't quite get done, things that we need to work on. So we're updating that. And so I think they're constantly looking at the university and where they want to be and ways to get there.
Ms. Garrett, what is your opinion?
Of the administration? Well, I don't work that much with them, being because I'm not up in those levels. But I don't get in on any of the strategic planning or any of those things. My involvement with them have always been positive. I have to work with several of them. Sometimes with the student accounts, we'll have to go over my head to try to. It's beyond my authority to help the students, so I'll try to go for them or with them to one of the vice presidents or even sometimes Dr. Gamble and plead their case and present the facts and just so that they can make a decision. And those have always been positive experiences for us.
Okay. Ms. Noon, do you think this current administration is going to take us into the year 2000 and for as long as, I guess,
I think they're building that bridge. Yes. I think they've got a plan.
Okay. What is your current take on all the construction that's going on around the campus, like the art and the music building combined? I think as they're supposed to be doing some work on the gym now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we're real excited about what's going on with the HKR facility. It's taken a long time to get the plans drawn up, and make it come in within budget. That's been a difficult process, and they've had to do a lot of rethinking of that facility. But I think they're to the point now that they're about really ready to, to head full force into the construction of that project. And I think it's going to be just a wonderful facility. I think it's real exciting that we're able to get something like that of that quality. The art music facility, I've kind of just stayed back out of that one and let the concrete blocks fall where they may on that.
Do you agree with with some students, with the art students, they have a problem with it, and the music students, they have a problem with it? Can you sympathize with those students?
I can certainly sympathize with all parties, not only just the students and the faculty in the different departments, but also the administration that had to make the decision on what to do, because there are things that could not be helped, and it was just one of those, unfortunately, no-win situations. We just had to do what was best for the university, and as the administration saw it, and just have to go on and make the best of the situation, I think.
Okay, what about tuition? I know when I came here in '93, tuition was like $750, and now it's almost $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going to see a steady increase in tuition to pay the bills?
Well, unfortunately, the only other source to tuition is about our only controllable source of income, because the state dollars are not increasing. So seeing as we're a state-supported institution, receiving more than 40%, more than 60 or about 60% of what we get from the state, if that doesn't go up, then the only other place to go to get the money to operate the university is going to be the tuition, and that is unfortunate. And it's always Dr. Gamble's highest priority to keep the tuition in an affordable range, and he is always extremely adamant about that. We're still the most affordable university in the state, four-year university, and we plan to try to keep it that way.
One more question.
Okay.
Okay. Both of y'all, I know both of y'all work in the office with each other. How do you feel about each other? You know what I'm saying? Let's start with you, Miss Diane, Miss Newton.
Well, I just think Brenda Garrett is a phenomenal person. I really do. I think she's one of the hardest workers I have ever had the pleasure of working with. She sees things from a completely different angle than I do sometimes, which is very good. She has to bring things into perspective for me quite often. She's so good at seeing through the situation, understanding people. She has such a way about understanding character, the character and the what drives different students, and I'm just thrilled to have her in my office, and extremely proud of the job she does and the help that she gives to the students and to me.
I enjoy working in the accounting, in the business office. Accounting sounds so boring and dull, but when I came, it does. It's putting numbers on a line. It's pushing pencils and calculators. But when I first came part-time, I was a little scared about going back to work after being at home for so long. But they made it easy on me. They helped me out. One of the reasons I decided and made the decision to come back to work full-time was because I had worked with them a little, and a couple of the people I had worked with at McAllister Fuel Company many years ago. So I knew we had a good understanding of one another. I knew we worked well together. We do work well together. We're very understanding. We're a team. If one has a problem that's more important than what we're doing, we all drop what we're doing and help that person. It's just what Diane's very supportive of us furthering education, of trying to attain new skills. She's very supportive of sending us to maybe workshops or whatever we need to do to learn what we need to deal with the students or to help us with our skills in dealing with different things. And I've enjoyed working there a lot.
Well, Ms. Newton and Ms. Garrett, we'd like to thank you for having yourselves on the program today. I've greatly enjoyed what you've had to say. This has been the SAU Report. I'm your host, Bwerani.
And I'm your host, Duane Maeweather.
The SAU Report is a production of broadcast journalism students in the Department of Theater and Mass Communication at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.